What's the good word, y'all? DKB here. So we're covering the final prospect in our 2023 NFL draft class, tight end Zack Kuntz out of Old Dominion. And I'm very excited to dive into this guy because when I seen the little bits of information and the highlight reels that he had with Old Dominion, I couldn't help but think this guy could really become something as one of those few rare day 3 picks that either become high impact players or they become superstars in the league. And even if he doesn't do it with the New York Jets, that'll be a bit of a blow, but I can't help but think this guy is a certified long-term high-level starter in this league by the time his rookie year is finished. So couldn't do it with a better tight end coach. Ron Middleton has himself a huge ball of clay here. Zack Kuntz is long on elite athletic traits. So excited. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Zack Kuntz, Old Dominion, 6'6", 255 pounds. He originally proclaimed himself to Penn State, where he mostly played special teams in his first 3 years. I think he totaled 3 catches for something like 36 yards, something like that. So very interesting that he couldn't really get on the field offensively with them. But you see him go to Old Dominion, and he breaks out in a big way. It wasn't necessarily an absolutely ridiculous stat line, but he definitely did enough to put himself on the map for his 2022 season, which of course we know now got cut short due to his injury. But all in all, very exciting prospect to put into place. Paint a little bit of a better picture for you guys how important to Old Dominion he was as soon as he arrived. He had he owned a 26.4% target share within that offense. Literally, he was a fourth of the passing offense for Old Dominion, which is crazy, especially as a tight end. But this is what he excels at, guys. So let alone he's also able to go out there and put up a pair of 9-catch, 100-yard games. I think he also put up a couple other 8-catch games for some pretty strong yardage. So we're definitely talking about a weapon here and somebody that we can utilize. Not necessarily the best fit because he's not a great yards after catch guy as of this moment in time, but he definitely could become that. So statistically, 2022 season, again, it got cut short. He played about 4 or 5 games, 12 catches, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he had to rehabilitate, go out there, and you think about it, still go and put up a legendary combine. A perfect 10 for the RAS score, an elite combine for sure from not just tight ends but any position group in general. This guy at 6'6" or 6'5" technically shouldn't be able to do the kind of 6'6". He shouldn't be able to do the kind of things that he's able to go out there and do, but it makes sense when you think about his background. He was a long jumper or a hurdler, one of those two, and or possibly both. And then I believe he also did a little bit of track, but basketball background as well. You see him boxing a lot of dudes out, different things like that. But what does he bring to the field? You're talking about a guy that has a pretty quick release, right? He has a burst, which you don't generally hear out of tight ends. He can make catches away from his frame. Obviously, the 6'6", I think his 34-inch arms, the catch radius is absolutely ridiculous for him. This is a guy that, like Zach Wilson, really could have utilized during his 2-year stint where, his accuracy suffered tremendously. You think about what happened with Josh Allen. They went and found a guy like Stephon Diggs who was able to go out there, and if it's generally in his vicinity, he's going to try to come down with it more often than not. So I'm excited to have this guy on the roster. And you think about him potentially end up being on the scout squad or flight school, as they call it, and Zach Wilson being there once again. This could be a marriage in the making for, 2 to 3 years down the line. But what else? Decent blocker. We'll kind of get into that. It's nothing to really write home about, so I'll leave it there for now. A pretty solid route runner. You're talking about a guy that is very capable of being able to get in and out of his routes. He's able to create separation at the top of his routes, which is not something you really expect from him, being able to kind of run away from people. And he's very much so still a novice in this manner, right? You're talking about a guy, as I mentioned, he played mostly special teams his first 3 years. You're really talking about a guy that's only had 15 games of experience to figure out what he's been able to do so far. So this is why you get really excited about what he can end up becoming. as a day 3 guy, I immediately look at him and think this is a starting tight end, capable player before his rookie contract is up. As I mentioned, I think he's going to be one of the higher tier tight ends, all of that good stuff. But this guy, he'll have to fail himself, and the coaching staff will have to fail him in order for him not to become a starting player in this league. Versatility, right? When match that with his athleticism, a mismatch nightmare for anybody. 6'6", you're not going to find almost anybody that's going to go out there and really be able to line up with him unless you have yourself like a Tremaine Edmonds. Even then, it's going to be a tough matchup for him all game. So when you think about safeties and linebackers and the different matches he can draw, combine that with the versatility. They were, Old Dominion used him as an inline tight end, a halfback, fullback, hybrid, a slot tight end. They even lined him up out wide, and we've seen him have success in every single one of those stops. Separation ability, as we mentioned, not only at the top of his routes, but you can kind of see him sometimes realize how big he is and be able to use his frame and different things like that, his arm length to create separation as well. Basically, as the saying goes with it, tight ends, quarterback's best friend. Does a really good job of finding soft zones or soft spots in the zone coverage. When there's scramble drills that happen and pass protection breaks down, he usually does a pretty good job of working his way back into his quarterback's field of vision to try to give him an option. And he fights for extra yardage. We mentioned the enormous catch radius, but we might as well double down on that. There's not going to be too many things that he doesn't have a legitimate shot of bringing down if it's in his area. And one of the things I love most is that he's a pretty above average hands catcher. Sometimes things still get into his body, but for the most part, he's using that basketball background and that hurdling background, and he's going up in the air if he needs to, and he's getting that ball. So love to see it. Now, part of this is probably a huge reason why he couldn't make it to Penn State. But diving into some of the areas he's not necessarily going to be great at, immediately, again, to put it in context, he's a 15 games worth of starting experience. If he was able to see the field more when he was playing in Penn State, you're probably talking about a little bit more of a complete package tight end. But when you bring the traits and athleticism that this guy has, having a blank canvas is almost a great thing rather than having to unteach certain things or try to instill other things to him that may not necessarily be useful. So not much of a downfield threat, at least as of right now. Intermediate, short range is definitely where he'll probably excel early on if he can ever see the field. Not much of a shifty player, shouldn't be a surprise. 6'6", 255 pounds. You're talking about a guy that isn't going to be a Darren Waller clone or anything like that in the league. Loses a lot of leverage battles when he's blocking those. So to kind of finally dive into that conversation, you would think at his size it would be a very easy situation for him to dominate. But again, it's odd because it's almost like he doesn't recognize how massive of a human being he is and that he should just be completely drilling people like Darnell Washington was. So I've heard a few interviews. He's actually mentioned, mentally wise, how he's grown and different things like that as he's realized what his skill set and traits are, and that he is actually a mismatch X factor for his team. So hopefully that continues to be something that gets worked out. Very much so feast or famine ability when he's blocking those. Sometimes you see it all click and you might as well put his defender in a coffin. Other times you're going to see him get beat out in situations by men almost 80 to 90 pounds lighter than him that it just shouldn't happen. One of the craziest things is we're talking about a 6'6", 255 pound man. He still has the ability to go out and put some more muscle onto his frame, right? He's probably a finished product physically when you're talking about him probably hitting that 270-ish range, but he could add some more muscle and still stay just as explosive, if not somehow become a little bit more. So I would look for that to be something that we hear about storyline-wise with him down the road, him packing on some muscle, much like we probably seen with the Lawrence Cager, but you're talking about a guy in Cager that was much, much lighter than what we're talking about here with Kuntz. Doesn't win as many contested catches as you'd expect. You'd assume he'd naturally be able to beat out 90% of his competition. If people get a little bit handsy, if they can give him some real competition on the ball, it's not so much of a a sure deal as you'd expect with him. And he's not necessarily good versus contact. That's really one of the most frustrating things. Again, I think as part of that mentality-wise, just him understanding he can go out there and impose his will on the other team. So hopefully that's something Ron Middleton can coach out of him as well. And to kind of sum Zack Kuntz up as a whole, he's much so more an athlete right now than he is a player. Again, I really think the best comparison is one of those international players that I think we get like a 1 or 2 roster spots for. This is a guy that probably has a lot of traits that you love, and in this case, obviously, yes, but he's definitely still, foreign to football, or at least being able to play at this level. We've seen it for 1 year at Old Dominion. 2022, the beginning of it looked great for him, and now you're talking about him taking a jump to the NFL. He's bypassing Big Ten, SEC, ACC, all of that stuff and jumping straight to the NFL. So don't expect for him to jump into the lineup or anything immediately. If they do it, then there's going to be a specific package of plays that's going to work for him, most likely in 3 tight end sets. But this is a guy in 2-3 years. Look for his name. This is probably going to be an immediate starting level guy for us. And if he does realize it doesn't even need to be his ceiling, if he can get a few core fundamentals down in his game, I think I've seen it best on somebody's Twitter post. If this guy had average blocking ability, he's a first-round prospect in this 2022 NFL draft. So I am very excited about having a guy like this on our roster. I was pretty concerned when I was hearing the reports about the team wanting to add some explosion and stuff earlier on. Maybe this was their plan the whole time if Zack Kuntz was going to stay on the board into the 6th, 7th round, which is why we've seen so many trade down opportunities. So can't wait to see what his future is. As far as some pro comparisons, there's 2, and this is more so in terms of, I guess, the ceiling in a way for him. There's not going to be a whole lot of prospects you can compare him to. But Mike Gesicki and Logan Thomas, in terms of him being more so right now of just a passing weapon threat and not a overall great tight end, I think he can definitely get there. But that's what we're looking at with him. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Zack Kuntz, how excited are you for him? And what do you think he can look like in this offense? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.